Hey guys, what's up? Good evening. I get this question a lot where people are asking about the best programming language for video games because let's face it, a lot of programmers are very interested in video games and they want to get into that industry. And so they're really confused when we do like top 10 lists and they're like, well, Python's used in web pages, but is it good for games and all that stuff? So the answer to that question is probably not. Python is a dynamically interpreted duck type language. It has static types. You have to read up on that actually, but it's essentially it's not very fast. It's not like a compiled down language when you need like raw speed. So you're not going to see a whole lot of game engine type stuff in Python. And if you do, it's going to be more along the lines of like a Python wrapper to like a C or C++ graphics library that you would end up using. But if you wanted to get into some basic, like some terrible looking games, then you could, use something like Pygame, which has been around for a very long time. So Python in the gaming industry is probably going to be more along the lines of like actually tying servers together and stuff like that. There's also the Python Kiwi project, which the last time I checked on it, there was some work that still needed to be done. It looked little buggy, but that is something, but I would not really recommend either of those two if you're just getting started in programming and actually want to get an actual game working. Number one, if you want to do native games, you want to do Android, then Java's the language for the Android environment. So for the entire SDK, for Android Studio and everything, I mean, just start learning Java if you want to go down that route. But even beyond that, I would probably avoid that. The reason why C Sharp is a good option for gaming is because it's a language that you can use with Unity. So Unity is a game framework that's going to do a ton of work for you, but most of the hardcore processing code for this engine has been written in C and C++. But C Sharp, you can write all basically your entire game could all be written in C Sharp. And you could also use JavaScript, and they also have their proprietary language, which they call Boo, I think, Boo. Now, with the advent of WebGL, though, you're now seeing graphics processing inside the browser. So the OpenCL or OpenGL, basically the competitor to Microsoft's Direct 3D, which is how a lot of graphics are run for any sort of graphics intensive software application, whether it be games or something like video editing and stuff like that. But the WebGL is now the graphics standard. However, we've been talking about WebGL for at least 6 or 7 years now, and there hasn't been a ton of progress in my opinion in that. But you do have some of these game engines that are actually popping up. So like Pixie.js. There's also something. I think the Play framework or something along those lines. I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. But you can see like something like Pixie.js, you can write games that work for browsers, and this is mostly 2D stuff, but you can use JavaScript for it. Now, if you wanted to do a AAA game engine, something like Unreal Engine, arguably Unity is not quite AAA, but Unreal Engine is something that you would end up using C++. They also have their blueprints, which is like their proprietary way of being able to do some basic scripting and stuff like that, but ultimately, if you want to get into like major game development with something like Unreal Engine, then you're going to be using C++. At one point, there was talk of getting it ported over to C Sharp, but I think that talk actually dried out. Now, one big news here is that I don't want to give my email. Anyway, so one big news is that Cryengine, which is another AAA major title and game engine, has opened up their platform to C Sharp as well. So you can now use C Sharp with Microsoft's tools and stuff like that to have another option. Now this is going to be a little bit more. Looks like they're changing their pricing model because there's a lot of money for these game engines and licensing it to indie developers. Number one, they get exposure. Number two, they do have the possibility of being able to make money off of them if the game ends up hitting it big. So CryEngine is another opportunity there that's going to be C++ and C Sharp for you. Another thing with C Sharp is if you're interested in more of like an indie type game, then Model Game is a completely free framework, but you're going to end up having to write a lot of tools there yourself. So you're not going to get a lot of hand holding. And from what I've seen with this engine, there's going to be quite a bit of work that you're going to have to do in order for an actual game to be released on this platform. Another thing that I mentioned, which I had a video specifically for the Godot engine. It's actually pronounced Godot. And from my American way of reading it, I thought it was Godot. So I did an entire video where I was calling it Godot. So that kind of sucks, but it's pronounced Godot. So it's mostly some developers, I think, in Brazil that are maintaining this. However, they just recently got some venture or some capital injected into the project via Mozilla. So that you might be able to see this engine start gaining some traction here in the next year or so. Now they also have their own proprietary language as well, which is very similar to like a Python, but they call it shit. I don't remember what they call it. Sorry, I'm tired. I don't remember what they call it. They call it some sort of. They have their own. Yeah, I was hoping they had the name here, but anyway, it's very similar to Python. It was originally in Lua, and they rewrote it in Python. But once again, it's actually mostly all that intensive stuff is being written in C and C++, with Python just kind of being a scripting language to be able to control it, similar to how C# is being used with Unity engine. All right, guys, so that's really the scoop of where I am on the game programming frameworks. There's so many of them out there. Like if you're going to go with C++, there are so many. Most of like the hardcore physics engines that I've seen are all in like C++. So like if I see a physics engine in C#, it's generally a port from like something like Box 2D or something like that, which was all written in C++ like C++ a long time ago. If I were going to get into games, and I've done some games and stuff like that. In fact, I have a little game project that I've been messing around with just recently, and I've been using Blender for my free 3D program, and then just using Unity because I think Unity is really easy, and I happen to know quite a bit about C#. So I just find that to be relatively easier than dealing with C++ and Unreal Engine. And that stuff ports out to Android and all that stuff for you. So anyway, guys, that's my advice, man. Take care. Have a good day, and talk to you later. Bye.